Good evening and welcome back to the 2 Deep podcast. A football podcast is what it is, people. With us as always, Jeff Chadiha coming to us from the starlit stages of Los Angeles, California as he is on the road. Look at him looking all dapper in his fancy plush cush hotel.
That's right.
That's nice. That's nice, Jeff. I'm impressed, man. Big
Yeah.
time.
Just like Eric. Living like Eric right now.
Yeah. And Eric coming to us from his childhood bedroom. That is strong as well, I guess, Eric.
I've had a great time here. I went to a Minnesota Lynx game last night with my daughters. That got me this rad, real awesome dad shirt that they gave me. You can't, been working in the basement, constantly annoying my parents with the volume of my voice. So
sure.
It's a good time.
And of course, I come to you from my basement, right? So who's the cool guy of the bunch? Let's see if we can figure this out. Seems like Jeff Chadiha is the winner on it. We got a big show. I love these kind of shows. I love these kind of conversations. We're going to tier up our quarterbacks, give you, and basically our own words, how we think is the best way to tier these quarterbacks up. Real quick, just what did you find as the most difficult part of the process, if anything, Jeff?
Well, actually getting the tiers ready and then having you change the explanation for the tiers. So I was like last minute trying to redo the whole thing.
I did.
Yeah, I had it all set up like I was doing it while I'm in LA for NFL Media Talent Summit. I'm trying to listen to my boss talk and write this stuff down. Then an hour ago, you changed the whole criteria. So
there's nothing more.
Yeah,
there's nothing more working in football than doing your favorite job while your real job is happening.
Listen. I feel a little bit beat up on this because I didn't change it. We kind of said, hey, here's how we're going to do it. I was just like, all right, well, just wanted you guys to see here's what I did, just so you know. So that you don't get shocked by anything, right? It wasn't to like go change how you did things. That wasn't it at all.
All right. Well, I'm good now. We're consistent on, at least you and I are. I don't know what Eric was doing, but I've got. And my boss thinks I was taking great notes, by the way, because I was scribbling furiously trying to get this done. So I was sitting next to Daniel Jeremiah and asking him to fact check it.
The good news is there's no documented, recorded proof of what you were actually doing, right?
That's right. Oh, I ripped that paper off in a hurry and got out of there fast without anybody seeing what was being written down.
Yeah. Thank God we're not recording. That's the good news here, right? With that one. Eric, what did you see as the most challenging part of the equation?
It's honestly what to do with all the young quarterbacks. I think on both sides of the spectrum. So, like, I think with Burrow and Herbert, whether or not to put them in the upper tier or not, I think with both men, it's a projection. And so whether or not you want to make that projection. And then I think with folks like Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Davis Mills, those players where we have 1 year of data on them, how do you relate those guys to the Mitch Trubisky's and the Tua Tagovailoas and the Daniel Joneses, the guys that I think we're more confident in what they are, but this exercise, I made it as one of who would I want this year. Then I think it's actually pretty tough, with the younger players, because I think at this time last year, no one had Justin Herbert, let's say, in the top 10, or maybe somebody had him in the top 10, but no one had Joe Burrow in the top 10, let's say. And then he's a guy that walks into Arrowhead, goes to the Super Bowl, almost wins the thing, and so obviously, like, there's a ton of projection with those players. And that's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get to it without further ado, because we've got a number of tiers to get through. Do we want to go bottom to top or top to bottom? Which creates more suspense or drama? Jeff, you're going to lead us. You pick which direction we go.
We'll go bottom to top. We did the head coaches last time. We went top to bottom. Okay. I think this will be more interesting. And so going off your criteria.
I'm taking offense.
I'm just saying you kind of. You're my guidepost for this now. So I'm trying to make sure I'm going down the right road. So 7 tiers I have here. I should explain to the people listening at home or watching at home. Tier 1 is elite. Tier 2 is you can win a championship with, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, the way I did it was I had Tier 1 franchise
it.
quarterbacks. Tier 2 can win a Super Bowl. Tier 3, there's upside. Tier 4, playoffs but no Super Bowl. Tier 5, so you're saying there's a chance. Tier 6 can facilitate a game. Tier 7, no. Backup only.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm at Tier 7. Only one quarterback is in that category for me, and it's Sam Darnold, Carolina Panthers. This was an easy one. It was, you're trying to move things around, and I agree with Eric saying that with the younger guys, it's harder to get a sense of where they're at. I'm not so willing to throw people like Drew Lock and Geno Smith and Mitch Trubisky, Daniel Jones into this category. I could, but Sam Darnold is the only clear-cut quarterback in the NFL right now who I think has no real future as a starting quarterback, who I don't think he will finish the season as a starter with the Carolina Panthers. I think I feel bad for him to a certain extent because he didn't have any real help with the New York Jets when he was there, and he wound up on a terrible Carolina Panthers team that's probably going to lose their head coach after this year. But other people have been in that position, and to be honest with you, I just don't think he has enough talent to be a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore.
Oh, it's so sad for the Darnold family, right? Just one guy. There's one guy down in the bottom. All right, Eric. First of all, how did our did you break it down in a similar way?
Yeah, I think I didn't name these, but I just they're common groupings. This is a group that, independent of age, I just don't think have a chance.
First of all, how many tiers do you have?
I have 7 as well.
You have 7 as well. Okay.
So this is my last one. This is one with basically, as Jeff said, guys that have, I don't believe, a chance in the league right now.
Okay.
And that's Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, Marcus Mariota, and I hate this, but I'm going to put him in here. And these are guys I have only 32 players. So I'm going with the projected week 1 starter for every team. Okay. Mitch Trubisky of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are my 4 guys where there's no way in hell I'd sign these guys.
All right, so the 4 again were, because you kind of bounced around.
Trubisky, Mariota, Drew Lock, and Sam Darnold.
Oh my God, we're gonna go to war in a couple of years.
So Drew Lock makes the list, given what he went through in Denver, not having what did he play, like 18 games, 20 games?
Drew Lock put them through that in Denver. Right? Are we not?
Listen.
I know he's a Kansas City kid and all this kind of stuff. Has anybody seen Drew Lock play? He's terrible.
All right, so I have and listen, you just absolutely called me out, and I had to call myself out for this because in my no, which I changed from hell no to no, backup only. I have Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, and I had to check myself and go, do you really think Drew Lock has a shot? And I hope I'm wrong for the Lock family, but no, I don't. I've got Drew Lock there as well. So I've got Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, and Drew Lock. Although I could be talked into him being thrown into. So you're saying there's a chance, of course, for
Drew Lock.
Yeah.
So so you're saying there's a chance. I feel like that's a better category the way you've lined it up, as opposed to facilitator of a game.
Well, no, because I'm saying there's a chance you could be up towards the top couple of categories, which is where I think you want to be.
Okay.
It just, for me, and again, I think you can do this however you want. Like Zach Wilson blew last year, but I can't close the book on him because guys, Josh Allen didn't look so hot his first year.
And Zach Wilson's played 3 less games than Drew Lock in his career, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, but
practice matters, okay? Film room matters. Game time, time in the league matters. I mean, Trent Green hadn't played any games, but after 6 years in the league, when he finally got a shot in Washington, he was able to.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but in this NFL, Trent Green would never play. Dake Delhomme would never play. Rich Gannon would have never played. It's a sad reality. Brad Johnson would have never played. We're in a potato chip league where if the guy, doesn't show anything in 4 years, his ass is out of the league. You know what I mean? Unless he's a high draft pick. And the problem with Drew Lock is like one of the statistical things is like he's the 40th pick in the draft, not the second pick in the draft. So he's gonna, I mean, this is his last chance. Like I also, in the fact that he doesn't have a chance is more of also just like he's not considered a highly touted guy. They might lump him in with like a Jimmy Clausen type at best, right? Like so. It's hard to, but like the NFL just discards these young quarterbacks so quickly. Like how many teams carry 3 players on the roster anymore?
That's true.
Yeah. I this is what he said. Aaron says, the way I read it, Soren has more faith in Drew Lock than he does Daniel Jones. I don't have faith in either one of them. Right. But if we were just ranking them 1 to whatever, I would rank Drew Lock higher. I've seen enough of Daniel Jones to know that it ain't going to be there. And it's kind of to Jeff's point. We haven't seen enough of Drew Lock for me to completely say he's out, except for I did pretty much say he's out by putting him in this category. But he was the toughest one of the bunch. And I like to be honest and say, okay, do I need to call myself out that I'm just giving him, I was going to put him in like, tier 5, I was going to put him in because, those are guys that I'm like, I'm not sure yet. Like, let me see. I saw a little spark here and there that I think they could do it, and you'll hear some of the names, but I haven't seen a spark from Drew Lock. Like, I haven't seen that game where I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, I just haven't. But to Jeff's point, like, he hasn't played enough for me to say absolutely no chance. Like, that's where I was getting myself. But then I think you haven't seen a spark. What chance are you giving him? So I hate doing it. I really do. I hate putting Drew Lock in tier 7, but that's right.
Only argument I make for Drew Lock is that I just don't think he's ever played in advantageous circumstances. I mean, the one season he played the longest he played in a season was in a COVID year where, you weren't practicing in the off season. He only played in 5 games as a rookie. And then last year he didn't play because he couldn't beat out Teddy Bridgewater. I give him a little more credit as a guy who, if he had a chance to play a full season, I'd be a lot more judgmental of him. But I just don't think he's played enough for me to be able to say if he got a fair shot, he couldn't. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a star, but be an adequate quarterback in this league.
I think our view is the same, and I think you can quibble over which one of these we put him in. But if he spent 3 years, backing up Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers and soaking in all the knowledge, could he emerge as a diet, Fitzmagic, or maybe a diet Alex Smith, maybe a little bit more protective of the football? Yes, I think he could. But will he ever emerge as a franchise player or a guy that I think you can win a Super Bowl with? No, he won't. And so that's why he goes there, because the goal is to win a championship. So you go down in this category when I know you can't win a championship with this guy. Could you win 5 games when your franchise guy's down with the guy 3 or 4 years from now? Yeah, I can see that, right? He could keep you in the hunt, play the Earl Morrill or those guys that have, but I don't even know that he could be Jeff Hostetler and win you the game, if he got to that point. That's
so, I mean, like Nick Foles is the absolute ceiling for this dude right now.
No, because Nick Foles could win. Nick Foles can get hot, and I don't think Drew Lock can get hot. I think the best is to.
But what was Nick Foles before he got hot? Like, he was not doing very much for the Rams. Remember that?
No, and that's a great point. But again, we're having to project. And so, like, if that's the case, and you're like, well, everybody's got a chance, because I saw Nick Foles be really crappy and he won a championship, right? Like, I'm going to go ahead and advance the storyline and say, okay, I haven't seen enough to think he could be that. But Nick Foles got on the field as a rookie, had a couple of moments with the Eagles, with Andy Reid at that point. Got passed over, got bounced around, found his way to Kansas City. Got some coaching, played well in a couple of games there, built his confidence back up, and then got hot for the Eagles. But he can play out. I think the better future for Drew Lock is Alex Smith. Coach the negative out of him and get him to be secure and take the easy reads and scheme him a couple of guys wide open. He'll hit those guys, hand off the ball, manage the game, don't lose it. That's what I think is the ceiling on him. But it's not a guy that you can ride to a championship. If you want to go, well, Trent Dilfer won a title. Okay, yes, go lights out Ravens defense, which I think is impossible to play now. Yeah, and you could bump a number of other people. Let's go.
The Ravens defense never made it back, by the way, and neither did the Broncos. in 15.
And that's, but you can do it once. It's not your game plan, but you can do it once if you find it there. All right, let's go next to Eric. We'll rotate through who has to go first on these. Eric, can facilitate the game is what I call tier 6. What did you call tier 6?
These are guys that I'm trying to think of, like, this is kind of like where Drew Brees was in like 2004. This is where I'm trying to think of guys that like got out of the miry clay. Were, you know, high well drafted guys, struggled, but have a shot. I'm not betting on them, but they have a shot. And
who's Myrie Clay?
Myrie Clay is like a you know.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah, okay, sorry. And I'm a little higher on Daniel Jones than Soren. I think when we come up for air this year and the Giants go over their season win total of 7 and they compete this year in a bad NFC, we're going to come back and say, holy buckets, did Daniel Jones have to put up with some shit in New York? Joe Judge, Jason Garrett, Pat Shurmur's a good guy, but not a great head coach. You put Dable there, I think that they're going to have at least a better shot. That doesn't mean I think he's going to be great. I just think he has a chance. Jared Goff has a chance. Carson Wentz has a chance. Davis Mills has a chance. Those are the 4 guys where I'm like, there's not a lot of upside, but they have a chance to be like in that what eventually will be like the Carr, Cousins, Winston kind of group with some luck.
That's funny because looking at it, I forgot that Daniel Jones was 24 touchdowns and 12 INTs as a rookie.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's a good athlete. His PFF grade has been fine. Right. Like the concerning thing is like Kenny Golladay went there and immediately stunk. Kadarius Toney went there, and actually Kadarius Toney was fine for a couple of years, but like he had injuries in 2019 or 2020 that hurt him. His PFF grade's always been better than the production, and I think that that's kind of where I'm leaning as well. Again, I'm not going to bet on him, but I actually think he's better. I don't think he's complete trash the way that I think most people who just come up for air and are like, oh, Daniel Jones, oh, he sucks. Like, I don't know. I think that there's a chance there. I think the problem becomes, what if he plays well this year and the Giants have like a 2017 Jaguars type season? Then what do you do with his contract?
Right. And that's the scary thing. I think you're almost afraid that he has a big year because then you don't know what to do. Right.
If give him the Bortles deal.
Yeah. If he sucks, you can move on. But yeah, and I don't think you can give him the we're all in. He's our franchise guy. I will say this. They've given him a lot of weapons, and the more weapons he's gotten, the worse he seemed to play. I'll go next. And I call this again, can facilitate the game. So tier 6 to me, these are guys that I don't think can win you a championship. But if you got to get by, they can play serviceable football so you can develop people around them, right? Like, because there are guys that suck so bad that if you're a wide out, like I think guys check out, like, why am I running this route? This jackass can't get me the ball anyway, right? And these are guys that can get a guy the ball. You scheme somebody wide open. You can continue to develop the other positions around him, but you are absolutely looking to replace Tyrod Taylor, Jared Goff, Gardner Minshew, Teddy Bridgewater, and Mitchell Trubisky. That is my tier 6. All these guys
backups in there.
Yeah, and I feel bad. I probably looking back at that 24-12 of Daniel Jones, because it's the exact same reason I gave Mitchell Trubisky a shot, was that early on he was good, and his career really, now that I look at it a little bit closer, I just immediately threw Daniel Jones down there. I'm like, I'm done with this guy.
The fumbles with Daniel Jones are a big problem. Right?
They are. And the turnovers are a really big problem. You're right. But Trubisky has had, a little bit of success early on. The one thing and why I probably should have, I do give some credit to the Pittsburgh Steelers taking a shot at a guy, right? And the Buffalo Bills, I think 2 good organizations. It isn't, moribund, horrible franchises that have said, oh, okay, let's see what we can do. But again, the same 24 touchdown, 12 INTs in his second year, can run a little bit, is an athlete. Like, this is a guy that's a prime candidate to be Alex Smith. Move the chains with his legs sometimes, scheme some things to give him some running lanes. Prime candidate. I'm not saying he is Alex Smith. He's a prime candidate. And Alex Smith, it took a while in San Francisco. I think he could get with somebody. But in the meantime, I think he can be good enough to facilitate the game. But Bridgewater's not going to win you a championship, right? But he can hit a couple of open guys. Same thing with Minshew, a little bit of swagger. Goff, if you got a good game plan, can execute it. Tyrod Taylor, I like a lot as my number 2 quarterback if I'm a head coach. But that's my group there.
Those are all perfect backup quarterbacks, right? Like guys, like if the Chiefs had Bridgewater and they played the Packers and Vikings in 2019, they probably go 2-0.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. Trubisky's the same thing. Any of the Taylor, any guy that can make plays with his legs when things break down because they're not the best passers in the world, like those are guys that are perfect backups. I think Trubisky is a really savvy guy for taking a crappy deal, going to a franchise that we all respect in Buffalo, and then having Buffalo basically leak out that he was a pretty damn good backup quarterback, right? Like it was a pretty good move by Mitch Trubisky, honestly.
It's the exact move that Josh Freeman didn't make, right? Like I think back, talk about another KC kid,
right?
And when he got let go by the Bucs and he was sideways with the head coach, and supposedly the Packers were interested in him, I was so much wanted him to go to the Packers and sit in the room with Aaron Rodgers and listen to the Mike McCarthy and how they were doing things. They were playing at their highest level then, and instead he jumped in and like 24 hours later was starting for a Vikings team that was going nowhere. I think it killed his career. And I think Trubisky did a great thing to try to resurrect his career. Jeff, what's your tier 6 look like?
Well, Daniel Jones is in my tier 6. You mentioned a lot of the same reasons. I believe playing with Brian Dable has the potential to help him be a better quarterback, given what Brian Dable did for Josh Allen. You look where he was at the start of his career and where he is now. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to make that kind of a leap, but I think Brian Dable is very creative with quarterbacks who have running ability. I think you saw what he did with Josh Allen. He's got a lot of receivers to work with, a lot of weapons. Saquon Barkley is apparently looking pretty good in mini camps and OTAs. I think that team could be a lot better offensively with a better coach and with some of those weapons staying healthy. So I give him a shot to at least play at a higher level. I'm not giving up on him yet. And I put Mitchell Trubisky and Marcus Mariota in this category as well. 2 guys who've been to the playoffs, 2 guys who can do things off script. They're not going to be stars, probably not going to be longtime starters where they're at right now, but they can help you get to the guy who's going to be your franchise quarterback. And so it's the same definition you're using as far as guys who can facilitate the game, run the offense, get you into a play, keep things stable. I think that both these guys, Mariota and Trubisky especially, have enough competence and experience to do that.
All right. Tier number 5, which I dubbed for me. I'll take the lead on this one. So you're saying there's a chance, right? From the old Dumb and Dumber, where he's like, so like, what do you think? I was just like, no. Like, well, what kind of chance? Like 1 in a million. And he turns around and he goes, so you're saying there's a chance, right? Like, so this is, I got to squint to see this, but, and I'm actually very proud of this because I've got 4 guys in this category and they're different kind of guys. Number 1, Kenny Pickett. I did throw the rookie in there, and I think it's easy to just say I'm not going to rank him, and that's fine because we don't know what he's going to be. But I think there's a chance, right? Like everyone was down on the quarterback class. He got into the first round in this one. I'll give him a shot to make that go. Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, 2 young guys that really did not play well, but could show you something with the legs. And I don't want to rule out some kind of like if Brett Favre had played his first year, it might have looked as bad as Zach Wilson. Right. But he didn't. He basically just sat on the bench in Atlanta and then got a shot, then threw a bunch of picks while also throwing for some yards. And so I think if Zach Wilson or Justin Fields comes out and throws for a bunch of yards, like I'd almost rather them have a Jameis Winston, like lead the league in INTs, but throw for 4,000 yard season. And I'd get kind of excited if I were either one of those teams. But if it's just like check down, and still some bad picks, it's going to be a disaster. But I can't close the book on him. But Marcus Mariota is a guy that I would like to see get in the hands of an Andy Reid. And I think he could be better than, I think he's got more physical tools than Alex Smith. And so I think he could be, steroided up Alex Smith. And I'm interested to see what he can do. I'm interested, but I'm disappointed he's back with the same guy that he couldn't perform with in Tennessee. Like, I don't get this signing. Like, it's almost like, well, I know the guy and he's not going to pop off at me in the quarterback room. So let's go grab him. I cannot figure out how you can be party to replacing a guy. Then you get your own head job, Artie Smith, and you go, okay, I'm going to bring in the guy that couldn't get it done. I don't get it, so I really wish.
I think it's because Arthur Smith doesn't have a clue.
So like you don't give any of the Tennessee offensive success with him there to his.
No, I think that the guy was a great play caller, but like being a head coach is a different animal, right? I just think
that could have been Vrabel's call more than Arthur Smith's call too, right?
Well, I think the play calling stuff was Smith, right? You saw.
He needs a call to change quarterbacks.
But I mean, the hidden part about Mariota was he was dreadful in 2019. I mean, and not only was he bad, but also Tannehill was 9 yards a pass attempt once he came in there, right? And then Henry started running well, and Mariota was terrible in that offense. That's the thing that I don't get is Mariota had much more success in other people's offenses, like even Matt LaFleur's offense when he was the OC there, than he had in Arthur Smith's. Arthur Smith is maybe the worst person for Mariota to play for.
I don't understand how he goes from an 8-7 record in 15 starts, completes 61% of his passes, which isn't great, but throws 26 touchdowns and 9 INTs. And a couple years later, he's 7-6, completes 69% of his passes. To me, he was close a couple of times to taking that next step and being a guy that is maybe not a franchise guy, but you're 27-11. We're not going to find better than this guy, and you overpay him and you doom yourself to mediocrity because he's sucking up too much of the cap. But he was pretty close to grabbing the spot, and then it was just gone. That's why I give him upside.
But that's, I think, was part of their calculation in that we don't want to get to a place where we might have to pay this guy to be our quarterback.
So agreed. The results were not good enough for him to get the contract. I'm not saying anybody made a mistake in not giving it to him, but I feel like he was close. He's an athlete by all accounts, quality.
He got a lot worse. So this is a telling statistic that is pretty stable year to year for a quarterback, and it just kept getting worse for Mariota. In 16% of his pressures were sacks. 17, it was 20. 18, it was 29.8, so 30%. And then in 2019, 35% of the time he was pressured, he ended up taking a sack. I think that's the one where you go back. There was a game that they played at home against the Ravens in 18 that they lost 21-0 there, where he took 9 sacks. And there was just an aspect of him in the pocket that was extremely just lost that I think it's hard to come back from, and I don't know where that happened, but it kept getting worse.
Don't you think, and not to make this a referendum on Marcus Mariota, but don't you think when you see those numbers, and I get where you say it's steady, because I think it's a coach sends a quarterback down a road of don't ever make a mistake, whatever you do, don't screw up.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Alex Smith is maybe the heavyweight champion of coming out that tunnel of well, as long as I don't throw picks, I'll stay employed. I'll stay the quarterback. And then he ended up being more than that. Right. And, or he at least was able to have the field vision on when to escape and run for first downs before they became sacks.
Alex's 2017 season was a masterpiece of, hey, I came out of all this crap and I was the league's leading passer throwing the ball deep, in an offense designed for a different quarterback. That was obviously a triumph of his career evolution, but I just don't know if that's going to happen for anybody else frequently. Alex was a very and from all apparent, I mean, I know Jeff, you can probably speak to this better than me, knowing more people in the league, but everybody thinks Marcus Mariota is an A+ human being, right? And Alex was that way as well.
Exactly.
So there might be an opportunity for him to learn, and obviously if he gets in the huddle, I don't think there are any teammates who are hey, I don't want to play with Marcus because he's an a-hole or something. So there are things going for him for sure. I just the Tennessee year I watched them closely because I bet the win total under, and I lost because they switched quarterbacks. But that whole year, the guy was just lost, and I just didn't. It looked bad, man.
Well, it did. I will point out and again, the absolute last thing I'll say about Marcus Mariota. He has 1,800 attempts in his career right now, and you cited the 2017 Alex Smith season. He had 4,100 attempts before that season. Mm-hmm. So we're a ways away from the experience level that Alex Smith had going into that. Jeff, how's this tier look for you?
Well, I see it more as there's a chance these guys could be good quarterbacks, not that they could win championships. And so this was basically the dumping ground for all the young guys. So Davis Mills, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, all in the same category. Obviously, Lawrence has played the best of that group. Looks like he's got the most promising future, but it's just too early for me to tell what they're going to be. They all have different situations. I like Justin Fields a lot coming out of school, and I think that we'll see what happens in Chicago with the different coaching staff, a defensive coaching staff that sometimes that works better for guys who are like him or more athletically skilled and more raw as quarterbacks. But ultimately, all these guys to me are just hard to pick. I can't put Kenny Pickett in this anywhere because it's just I can't pick rookie quarterbacks at this stage.
Oh, I hear you. All right, Eric.
Yeah, this is like high draft capital, hasn't shown anything yet, but I'm not giving up. And this is Tua, Fields, Lawrence, and Wilson. Tua I put in here because, I mean, I know that there are Tua fans out there, man, and it is a
what's the left of you, or the right of you, I guess. My left or right.
Yeah,
because I haven't quit on the guy. I'm a fan.
Yeah, that's pretty low for Tua.
Tua's been terrible.
And he's in the same category as the other guys you just mentioned?
Yeah, what has Tua shown us in 2 years?
Some wins.
I think he's shown more than the other two guys.
Okay, I'm gonna
statistically.
Don't you dare
maybe I'm wrong.
Tier. Don't you dare go running on your tier. Don't you?
I'm not running on it. I'm just looking. Here's passing depth for me. So Tua Tagovailoa, from 10 to 19 yards in the field. 51% completion, 68.6 NFL passer rating, 2 big time throws. So our highest graded throws, 9 turnover worthy plays in the middle of the field. So like, if he's going to succeed in a Shanahan offense, he's got to bury. Those are jumpers he's got to bury. Right.
We need to go watch some more Tyreek Hill podcasts. Get him on it needed to be said podcast.
Yeah, did you not hear? More accurate than Patrick Mahomes.
That's right.
That makes me like, and also it's one of those like thou doth protesteth too much. Like we didn't have anybody like telling everybody, oh, for like Tom Cruise on the couch, like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is really good. God, I love Patrick Mahomes. But now we have all these people like going out of their way to tell us how great Tua is. I feel like that's a pretty like telling sign that like it's just not there.
All right. Let's go to tier 4. Jeff, you're back up to.
Okay. This is playoffs, no Super Bowl. So the quarterbacks can get you to the playoffs.
Right.
Can't win your championship.
This would be my, being a guy that's been covering the Chiefs. This is Alex Smithville.
Okay. This is where I slot in Tua. This is where I slot in Baker Mayfield. This is where I slot in Jameis Winston. That's the group for me. I think. And Jameis was a little bit of a stretch because I know he hasn't played in a playoff game yet. But I feel like if you get him in an offense where you're not asking him to be as reckless with the football as he was in Tampa, throwing the ball down the field, limit the turnovers, that receiving core in New Orleans went from being one of the worst in the history of football to potentially being pretty dangerous with Chris Olave coming in, with Jarvis Landry coming over, with Michael Thomas coming back. So I like what he has there, and Alvin Kamara in the mix to have a bounce-back season. I think that they can contend for a playoff spot. And I think Baker, regardless of all the smoke and drama surrounding him, I go back to what he was a couple of years ago with Cleveland. I think he's a competent player. If he's in the right offense with the right coach and he's playing within himself, he can get you there. And Tua is the same situation as Winston. I think he's got a ton of weapons. He's not a championship quarterback, but he's had his best chance to make the postseason this year.
Okay. Eric?
This is I call all these quarterback Kirks. But this is exactly what Jeff said. Like they can make it. Like if this player is on a rookie deal, you can win a Super Bowl with them. If he is on a veteran deal, you are absolutely going to waste years of your franchise's life. And if there was a middle class quarterback contract, all of these players would be perfect for that, but there isn't. So I have Matt Ryan, and Matt is fallen. He was better than this in his career, but right now that's where Matt Ryan is. Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones, Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jameis Winston, Kirk Cousins, for whom this is named, and Derek Carr.
Okay.
All of those quarterbacks, if you're a real contender in the NFL, your team is favored by a touchdown against them in a playoff game.
So I want to point out, since Baker Mayfield is not slotted to start anywhere, he is not in any of your teams.
He's part of this group. Baker Mayfield belongs in this group.
Okay.
A player that, if he's on a rookie deal, can go 11-5 and have the Chiefs on the ropes in the playoffs. If he's making $30 million a year, your team has no chance.
Right.
I think you'd argue he's one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. That's how I look at it. Is he one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL?
I just don't have him starting anywhere right now. If he starts for Carolina, he's in this realm. What if
he starts for Seattle?
He's still in this realm. I mean, Seattle's going to be horrid, but he'll start. Well, so is Carolina.
Yeah. So, all right. So tier number 4, playoffs but no Super Bowl. I go Matt Ryan. I agree. Everything you said. It used to be higher, but he's not anymore. Ryan Tannehill. I mean, we've seen it. He defines it. He is Alex Smith right now. I mean, he takes a team, has been highly seeded, but they're not going to make it through the playoffs because when he's got to do it, he can't. Kirk Cousins and Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, these are guys that
are harsh.
These are guys, but I don't know how I'm harsh when I explain what the tier is.
Yeah.
Right? I'm saying these guys can be playoff quarterbacks. Again, my whole focus at the quarterback position is to find guys that hopefully can be franchise quarterbacks, which are not just win a championship, but can win many championships, can carry lesser talented teams, give you an opportunity to win every single year.
Well, and I think the distinction, by the way, I think matters. I said this on a show the other day. It's like the NFL is designed right now for you to find a Patrick Mahomes, right? Like that is the pinnacle. That is that caliber of quarterback is the only quarterback worthy of that contract. And I think the problem is the NFL also gave you an out if you aren't successful in finding a Mahomes, which is the fact that these rookie deal wage scale guys make 5 times less. And so the worst place you can be in the NFL, and I think that's why this distinction matters, is a step below a Patrick Mahomes, but making almost as much, right? Like that is because the alternative is the league has given you a means by which to be competitive without that guy, right? And but that's the problem with like teams like the Raiders and the Vikings and the Titans and those teams, is that they pay for the Tannehills of the world and they got to trade the AJ Browns, or their offensive line goes to hell, things like that guys like Mahomes can overcome. Guys like those guys can't, and then that's where that distinction, that finely thin distinction matters.
Yeah, and that's why to me my tiers are based upon whether or not I've eliminated all possibility of those of a guy becoming something like that. Right? Like what I'm looking for is tier 1 or tier 2 quarterbacks. If they're not that, I want to move on. I want to figure that out quickly and move on. Like I can get Tyrod Taylor and go 9-8. But I know I'm not going any further than that. That's why Tyrod Taylor can't be up that high.
Yeah,
Baker Mayfield.
It's why when Vic Fangio wanted to keep his job, he got Teddy Bridgewater and replaced Drew Lock, because he felt Bridgewater was the quickest way to 9 wins.
Yes. And to Jeff's point, I'm not convinced that Baker Mayfield can't become that kind of guy. If he can land in a place where he and be healthy, we've seen the guy make some throws and make some plays. So that's why we haven't even gotten to Baker Mayfield on my list. So Matt Ryan, Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo. Eric, you're up first for tier number 3. By the way, if you're catching us via the podcast, we stream live. We're going on a Wednesday because of Jeff's travel. Usually Too Deep is on a Thursday at 9:00 Central Time. If you're catching us in the stream, you can comment in the chat room. Got a lot of people on Facebook, YouTube, on Twitch that are commenting right now. In there, you can be a part of the broadcast if you're in there at that point. You can also follow along on Twitter. Can't comment in there, but you can follow along on Twitter. So if you are, we'd appreciate it if you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the love button, give us some retweets. It goes a long way for us, and it doesn't cost you nothing. Let's get to tier 3. Eric, what is your tier 3? How do you describe it?
So tier 3 for me is this quarterback would be a Super Bowl contender in the 90s and 80s consistently, but in the NFL now, you need everything to go right. And so I put Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, and Deshaun Watson in this group.
Wow. What's left? The tier 2 and tier 1 is going to be like amazing for Eric.
Yeah, I mean, but like my point with Stafford, right? Like Stafford, in my opinion, showed last year that he's above the Kirk Cousins, the Derek Carr, that kind of group, because, you know, when Cousins went to Minnesota, he got a big contract on a ready-made team and failed. But at the same time, like the Detroit Lions, as everybody knows, tried to build around Stafford multiple times and failed because Stafford's good, but not good enough to make the top end dollar and then build around. You know what I mean? Like you don't build the plane around Matthew Stafford. You put Matthew Stafford inside the plane when it's built, right? And then you could possibly win a Super Bowl. I think Dak is kind of in that realm too now. I think he's shown that where he's good. And again, these caliber of quarterbacks could win back in the day, right? Back in the day before there were so many good quarterbacks. This quarterback could win consistently, but they can't win that consistently now. But like Dak, like Dallas is going to struggle building the plane around Dak for the next decade, aren't they? Like, you know, when you inserted Dak onto a ready-made team, it was Super Bowl, let's go. You know, I think Watson's the same way, you know, and Cleveland's testing that theory out. But they're a step below the guys where I'm building the plane around them.
All right. I will go next. My tier 3, where I called it there's upside, is going to be considered harsh. My guess is, let's see if Jeff Chadiha considers this harsh, because I've got a lot of quarterbacks in this category. Kyler Murray, Mac Jones. This is the one that's going to blow you away, because I guarantee you the guy might not even be on your I don't think he's on your list, because I would have heard his name already. Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, listen, I didn't see much, but like the pedigree at Clemson was tremendous. I think he had an absolute hot, white, fat mess of a coaching situation going on with Urban Meyer's bump and grind approach to coaching. And so I'm going to go with my original thought that there's going to be a big step forward in year 2. Baker Mayfield, Jameis Winston, Trey Lance, Tua Tagovailoa.
Trey Lance, 3 in the category 3. Wow.
Okay. But I mean, again, it's upside. What I'm looking for are guys that, like, I if I wanted to win a game tomorrow, there are guys in lower tiers that I would take Kirk Cousins, but I don't know what Trey Lance is, and I'd rather be a team that has a young guy with physical tools that I'm not sure yet what his ceiling is, than have Kirk Cousins and I know we're only going to here, right? So that's why he's a tier up. It's about what I would want if I'm, and again, the goal being to win a championship. I get it why GMs that are like 3 years in and are like win or else are not going to put together their quarterback tiers like this. But this is, to me, how you should do it. If you're trying to become Bill Belichick, this is how you do it. You need guys that can win you games. So Trey Lance, Tua Tagovailoa, Davis Mills, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson. I'll tell you why.
That's as hodgepodge as it gets right there.
I know it is.
Lot quarterbacks.
Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson are in this category. I had them in tier 2, but I honestly, Lamar Jackson's asinine contract negotiations to me says that it's never that the Ravens are propping him up. Plus he runs, he's going to get beat to hell. The Cam Newton end is near for Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. So I don't like that part of the equation. And Deshaun Watson is such a tumultuous mess right now. This is Deshaun Watson finishing up his last year in Houston, he's in tier 2, maybe even in tier 1, probably in tier 2 for me. I'm not as high on him, even when he didn't have the off the field stuff. But with this off the field stuff, you can put him down in 5 or 6. I mean, there are franchises that wouldn't touch the guy if it doesn't work in Cleveland. It's not like 31 teams are going to be calling him.
Well, not anymore. I think that the problem with the Browns is they knew all this stuff. They just didn't know that the public backlash would be as bad, right? That's where they failed here, is assuming the public would be okay with this after a year of him sitting out.
Yeah, no, I listen. They're
be different when they start playing games.
So tier 3, let's see.
That was your tier 3, right?
Yeah, that was my tier 3. So now we need Jeff's tier 3.
Okay. Mine is Carson Wentz. And this is, again, upside, but needs help to win a championship. That's how I'm looking at this.
Okay.
Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill, Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jalen Hurts, Matt Ryan, Mac Jones.
Okay. It's a similar list. It's very safe.
Yeah, minus an MVP candidate in the top 5 quarterback that you had on your list. Number 3. I don't know if I'm putting Trevor Lawrence in the same category as Lamar Jackson, but hey,
how many playoff wins does Lamar Jackson have?
The same as Trevor Lawrence, right?
No, he's got one more.
Trevor Lawrence, one more than Trevor Lawrence.
He's got one more. So I mean, that's my point, right? The goal is to win a championship, right? Like I said, if you want to win 10 games and put some butts in the seats coming off a 5-win season, Kirk Cousins will do that for you. You get in there, but if you want to win a championship, you're not going to get there. Trey Lance, I don't know. Pretty good pedigree. People like him. What is it? 5 touchdowns, 2 INTs?
In tier 3? People like him?
No, it takes all those. It takes – are you going to tell me that Trey Lance will never play in a Super Bowl?
I will tell you that I wouldn't bet on it right now.
Right.
I wouldn't bet on it happening before Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson do.
Would you make a statement like somebody in the media made that if this happens, I will never cover football again? Right? Would you make a statement that said it was Mike Florio with the Tyreek Hill situation? He said if Tyreek Hill ever plays football again, he will quit covering the NFL.
Okay.
Florio always prescient in his approach to what's about to happen in football.
Right. So, but my point to this is like that's what I want. I want a guy that I think might still have the possibility. Right. If I can't we're going to get to tier 1. I can't get to the guys that I know I can win with. Then I want to find a guy that I'm not sure that maybe I can, that maybe that ceiling's there. I mean, listen, again, that's why I stressed how I did it. It's not a career achievement award, right? It's about I'm trying to find my franchise quarterback. If I'm looking down in this tier, like I can't tell you, like for me, Kyler Murray could be a franchise quarterback. He absolutely could be Russell Wilson. People thought he was the MVP at one point last year. His playoff performance was so abysmal that it really it dinged him from being a notch higher with me. Mac Jones, I'm not as sold on Mac Jones, but I mean he was a rookie and he took his team to the playoffs. Carson Wentz has played, like I said, MVP football for a stretch. All these guys have had moments. Like Jameis Winston is the one that I thought I would get the most grief for, not Trey Lance.
Yeah.
I think we all. I mean. I once coined the nickname Flamus Winston because we all know what Jameis is capable. The guy led the league in passing yards.
I will quote.
By the way, speaking of prescient, I wrote for Peter King in August 2019 and wrote, I think that Jameis Winston's going to lead the league in passing yards, and then he did it. So I am the foremost expert on things Jameis. In case anybody's wondering.
And I will grant you that. And that is at least the 7th time I've heard you cite that prediction on a podcast. 3 of them on this one, 4 on the PFF forecast.
Look, it was 25-1, Soren. So I have carry the 18 more times that I can say it by law.
I grant you that. I grant you that. But I mean, like Jameis Winston, I think if he gets with the right coach. Like, I feel like last year with New Orleans, when people were like, oh, look, he's not making mistakes. I'm like, yeah, but you kind of neutered him.
They were throwing for 200 yards a game.
He was efficient, though. I mean, like, he was efficient, and you didn't have good wide receivers. Kamara was injured and not effective for a lot of the year. And, that was a big hurt for them. Jameis has a chance. I mean, I think in Tampa – that last year with Arians, like they were very obstinate about the offense they were going to run, and he threw a lot of interceptions. Right. And, that defense was pretty good, and like it carried them for most of the year. And that's why they went 7-9 instead of like 4-12 with all those interceptions. But, there's talent there, right? Like, but he's not like, he's higher than Daniel Jones. He's higher than Jared Goff. He's not terrible,
Yeah. All right. So then I just realized I have Kyler Murray. And so everyone's done their tier 3, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tier 2, I just realized I have Kyler Murray in tier 3 and tier 2. So I'm taking him out of tier 2 since I already cited him in tier 2. All right. My tier 2, I'm up on this one. Can win a Super Bowl. Matt Stafford, obviously, already has. Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, and actually, I'm sorry. I meant Jalen Hurts should have been down in the last one. I just saw that he got
3.
Yeah, he's tier 3. I think there's still upside there. It's a small group up here. It's 3 guys. It's Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, and Matt Stafford. It's you get pretty quick from the way station of tier 2 to tier 1. You really should never be in can win a Super Bowl. You should be a franchise guy who has one. And I know Stafford has, but I'm still not convinced that, Stafford was playing kind of crappy down the stretch too.
They were a 4 seed that beat a 4 seed that beat a 6 seed in the NFC title game. Like they were under 500 against the spread last year. Like flags fly forever, but that Rams team was not a traditional Super Bowl winning team.
I agreed. And that's why Matt, and I think part of that's because of Matt Stafford. And so it's just Matt Stafford, Dak Prescott, and Derek Carr that are in tier 2. They can win a Super Bowl right now. Doesn't have to be the best team, can't be the worst team, but they can win a Super Bowl. Jeff?
What's the evidence that Derek Carr can win a Super Bowl?
There's none as far as the postseason performance. Let's see what he does with Devontae Adams and Waller, but he made, to me, he made big plays and big games to get the Raiders into the playoffs. If you want to say you're overrating him, I could bump him if he doesn't carry them into the playoffs this year, which they're not favored to do. Then he drops immediately down to tier 4 with Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think him getting them to the playoffs with Gruden and all that mess going on and Henry Ruggs, I think that gives him. I hear what you're saying about just his track record, but I just think his leadership and the way he, showed up in big games for that team after what they flamed out the last 2 years in the playoffs, I think that gives him a leg up in my book.
Okay. Jeff, who's your tier 2?
He's in there. Derek Carr, along with Stafford, Lamar, Dak, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson, and I'm sure there'll be some argument on these two, Kyler Murray and Kirk Cousins.
There'll be argument. I mean, we'll have to pick Eager up off the floor on Kirk Cousins.
He had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, he did. But the Vikings led the NFL in 3 and outs last year.
What were his overall stats?
I get that, but that team, and that team bends over backwards to try to make that contract look good. And
that's fair, but let's answer Jeff's questions first. First of all, his overall stats: 66%, 4,200 yards.
Yeah, they were great. He was 7th in WAR. He's
7 interceptions. He had a 103 passer rating. His QBR brought him home 9th in the NFL. I mean, I know that you hate Kirk Cousins and all things Vikings, the passion of 1,000 burning suns.
True,
but from being in the same category as Derek Carr, you can't knock.
No, and I have him in the same category as Derek Carr. I think if you have
tier 6,
if you have Cousins on a rookie deal, you are a Super Bowl team. If you have Cousins and Carr, this is my point with Carr too, and maybe Carr does more than this, but again, this is the point of team building, right? When you sign a guy like Cousins or Carr or Tannehill or Garoppolo or whatever, the Vikings have not signed an offensive player for more than $5 million APY from another team since they signed Kirk Cousins.
Right.
And so everybody's going to look to support and he has terrible interior offensive line play and all this kind of stuff. And the combination of the fact that his contracts are always guaranteed and they're always small, they're always short, right? Means that they never could go out and get a Joe Thuney and move his money back 5 years because there's not 5 years left. You know what I mean? That contract and his deficiencies as a player, which are few, but they're important, I think means that you cannot win a Super Bowl with him. That's like my point is that, yeah, I think he's a great passer. I think, he's a good football player, but I just think, and it's, they find a different way to lose because of that contract every single year.
I think it's an interesting point to make, because I ding Lamar Jackson with the, foolishness that's going on there. And I would ding Kirk Cousins as well. Like, I don't mind that he's like, hey, I want guaranteed money. But the fact that a team will give him that pretty much just says that the team is feeling like we can win 10 games, put butts in seats, and make a profit.
Well, and there's a difference between Cousins and Carr. Carr's deal was 5 years. And so over time, Carr became a value because, the cap went up and all this stuff. And frankly, Carr's play, much like Cousins, has improved steadily over the course of the last few years.
But Jeff, go ahead, Eric.
And so from a team building standpoint, Carr was always more advantageous to the Raiders than Cousins was to the Vikings. And like that's why the Raiders have had more team success than the Vikings have had of late, because eventually the economies move toward in their direction. The problem is with these guys, because they play well and the market rates are relatively flat. Once you reach the threshold of being a good quarterback, you're getting roughly the same amount as what like Pat and all those other guys are getting. Right. Like it's just a trap. And again, like, I'm not saying the guy sucks. I'm saying the guy's not perfect, and the imperfections are magnified when you're paid that much.
Right. Okay. But I do want to point something out. And this goes to Jeff's point, is like, Jeff, would you say that if you flip flop Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins last year,
that's exact, or Derek Carr,
right?
You get the same result.
I mean, and I think you can make that case. And to your point about the contracts, because I think, and for whatever reason, my bookmarked link is not working here. So I got to try to find this. Oh, it's because now I just figured it out why. Anyway, I'll have to fix that. Anyway, hang on. The Rams. So like everyone talks, to the point about the contract, and I think it's an important one. You want to be able to be, flexible with the quarterback. But if you go to 21 and look at the Rams, everybody's going to be like, oh, Matt Stafford, he wasn't this mega deal. He only counted $20 million against the cap. But it's his $20 million. What you have to remember is the quarterback position. It was his $20 million and plus, Jared Goff's 24 dead. So the whole, like, people aren't going to say this, like the new percentage, like, oh, he was still below the 12% or 13%. Everyone's going to keep citing that number because they're going to just take the quarterback's number and then put it. But Matt Stafford's real cap number was $44.7 million, right? $44.7 million, because to get him, you had to eat Jared Goff's money. So that the whole 13% community can shove it. That's number one.
But again, it's one of those, like, you can't build the plane around Stafford. You can put Stafford in the cockpit and win. I think you can generously say that about the other guys in the list below, which is Carr and Tannehill and those guys. Right. I personally believe that Prescott and Stafford and Watson will take more chances, to the point of, like, again, like Kirk Cousins is never going to lead the league in interceptions, or, he's not going to have high, big time throw rates or whatever the hell, but he's, like, again, Kirk was like one of the highest quarterbacks in the league in what are called unsuccessful completions, which is just like, 3rd and 8, Kirk needs 7, wants 2, you know what I mean? And like, so, his completion percentage is really good and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't help the offense at all. And his stats are great. Like, again, I think it was a little bit of a step below. And to me, all the things, like, we're not even, I mean, Cousins' numbers were in many ways better than Patrick Mahomes last year, right? Like, it's not, it's the thinnest of margins that often don't show up in the statistics that are the reason that, guys like Tom and Pat are the ones that are winning Super Bowls, and Carr and those guys have never won playoff games.
Matt Stafford and Jameis Winston in a poker game will jam all in. They'll get ace king and go, this is where I'm going to take my stand. They'll shove all their chips to the middle of the table, because they know what's the difference between being blinded out over the next 20 rounds, right? For people that are card players, okay, great. I get to sit at the table and listen to the witty banter of the card, of the card community here for more hands, but you have no shot of winning because you're just being slowly beaten to death. And that's the view of Kirk Cousins. But I think, to Jeff's point, that was absolutely the view of Matt Stafford. And if it wasn't, it was part Cousins, the bad parts of Cousins and Jameis Winston. That not only would he not make the big throws when you need it, but then he'd also kill you. And he would throw a pick at a bad time because he'd never gone anywhere. Then he got with the Rams, and he it's obvious that his skills are there. So I mean, the difference that I have with Cousins, and Jeff, you'd be the guy most equipped for this, is like, is he the clown that he seems to be? Like, is he a leader of men? The quarterback has to command the huddle and be a leader of men. Like, he comes off as, and you had to have talked to people up there. Is he? And I know, and Eric, I know you too. You have your links to Minnesota as well. Is he a complete clown? And that's what kills him and keeps him from ever. Like, if he went to the Rams would have lost to the Bucks because they're not following Kirk Cousins through that door.
I saw him. I was at the Saints game when they beat them, whatever it was, 3 years ago, right before COVID, when the Saints were supposed to win the championship. And, he made some big throws, game-winning touchdown pass to Kyle Rudolph, and he was on fire in that game. And look, COVID has dinged him, the way he dealt with it. Mike Zimmer obviously got unhappy with him, and that affected his leadership, but he also worked his way through that. And so there are some things with him, religion-wise, that have caused him issues, but I also think that he's rebounded well and found a way. If you play well, gotta respect that more than anything else. That's why he's on my list where he's at, because the numbers he's put up, it's hard for me to take a guy who's in the top 10, who's with a top 10 quarterback last year, and say he's in the same category as a Carson Wentz or Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think he played himself above that group. Now, can he play himself into the elite category and all that stuff? I don't think he can do that. But again, that's why we have tiers. I mean, this is where he belongs in my book.
All right, we're to tier 1. Jeff, lead us off. We're back to you.
I haven't done tier 2 yet.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, I'm sorry.
So my tier 2 is
one guy.
No, it's a few players who I think are elite, but could go either way. Like, there's a risk that they could fall off. But Burrow, Herbert, Jackson, Wilson,
Joe Burrow,
Herbert. So like.
Jackson. Okay, I'm fine with that.
Coming out of 2017, we all thought Carson Wentz was it, right? He was a star. And so coming out of 2021, we all think Burrow is a star for similar reasons, right? The red carpet ride to the Super Bowl type of thing. And obviously there's always a risk that the guy could fall off. That's kind of, the four guys above these guys are probably never going to be bad again.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You got any knock on that, Jeff?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's a smaller group than what I have, but I think it's the right group.
Yeah. All right. Tier 1, Jeff. What do you got? Who's up there?
Obviously, Mahomes. For all the people who think I'm a Chiefs hater, I'll put his name up there first. So hard to go with Mahomes, number 1. Obvious choice there. And then Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. This is no particular order, by the way.
Right.
Tom Brady. I have Herbert in my elite category. These are elite quarterbacks, franchise, gonna win championships, maybe multiple championships, probably get to the Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And Deshaun Watson. Before all his troubles, was considered a top 5 quarterback. I know it's easy to forget what he was like in Houston after all the allegations and things that have gone down with him off the field, but I think he's a hell of a player. He's been a hell of a player since he came in the league. He hasn't had a lot to work with in Houston. I think regardless of how many games he plays in Cleveland, they'll be in the playoffs, and he will have a pretty good run down there.
All right. Eric, tier 1. How do you describe the tier 1?
I have the same group, except for obviously my Watson's down a few for me. I just think Watson's arm strength is something that's kind of interesting. Like, all 4 of these guys, Mahomes or Brady's different, but
give me the list. Make it official. What's the list?
Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Allen, in no particular order. Brady's arm strength is his development of his arm strength is one of the craziest stories in NFL history. Brady was not a plus deep thrower until like 7 years ago.
TB12.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was one of the great triumphs of modern medicine / steroids / homeopathic great American shaman. By the way, those CBD oil drinks were pretty good.
I had people in the league telling me when they won the championship that year that he was not he had fallen out of that elite category, that he was still a pretty good quarterback, but he wasn't doing what he did last year and impressing people. So yeah, to your point, like he's become a better player from year 1 to year 2 in Tampa Bay, which is amazing.
Yeah. He led the league in wins above replacement last year, and it was almost completely because of volume. Aaron Rodgers was the most efficient quarterback in football last year, but that Packers team actually runs the football and leans on the run game. The Buccaneers, I think, had the most wins in NFL history for a team that threw the ball 70% of the time or more. Like they lean on Tom, and the guy's epic. He's just really good, and it's crazy what he's doing at his age.
By the way, I'd like to point out Irish Mac. Sorry, that popped up there. Irish Mac, and you weren't the one.
Herbert's in the second tier, I said.
Yeah, Herbert was in the second tier, Irish Mac, but I like this one. Karen. Avocado ice cream greater than PEDs. Okay, so that speaks to Tom Brady. And I think Aaron needs to be highlighted. If Watson wins the Super Bowl, I'll unsubscribe to this podcast. I think that's I think that's a play on Mike Florio on where it is. He's putting it out there. All right, my tier number 1 is made up of 7 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, and again in no order like you guys. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Joe Burrow. I have no problem with Herbert or a Burrow being down because they haven't won a championship. I have no problem with it being reserved for guys who have been there and done that. But I will say this: Justin Herbert doesn't go to the playoffs this year. Like, okay, we're trending towards I don't know what, some Matt Stafford and some Dan Marino, but without even the early playoff success. But he needs to get into the playoffs because, that Raider game was painful. That was a pain. Oh, look at all the 4th down conversions. Yes, all the way to 4th down, and I am ready to throw it at the feet of the offensive coordinator. But you've got to just be like, we're not running that, we're running this now. And so Herbert, this is a bit of a leap of faith, even though he's been great statistically.
The old president would have said, we gotta find out what's happening here.
Yeah.
If Herbert doesn't make the playoffs.
Yes. Because
you got to find out what's going on.
Yes. Well, but I mean, I'm defending you're not having him in tier 1. It's one thing to put a guy up there who's been really impressive, who hasn't won a Super Bowl, that's at least gone to the playoffs. Like Lamar Jackson's I go to the playoffs. I've been an MVP. Justin Herbert's done neither. Now, granted, he's only been in the league 2 years, but I'm going to go ahead and put him up there. And I'm surprised there's not a little more love for Russell Wilson. I mean, I know if we're going to talk about Kirk Cousins being kind of a goof and, Baker Mayfield, the question was up here, can Baker Mayfield lead? Irish Mac had that one, and I think that's a legit concern. Can Deshaun Watson lead anymore after everything that he's been through? I think those are all legit questions to ask of these guys, but I don't think Russell Wilson's that kind of damaged goods.
I think he's been hurt just because of the way Seattle fell apart around him, and the whole let Russ cook campaign didn't really work out for them, and they had to go change some of their offensive strategy. That's the only thing I would knock on him. I mean, ultimately, he's a small quarterback who's made a living running around and scrambling, and so he's been good at it, but he just hasn't been as dominant physically as some of the other guys on my list. Herbert makes my list because he is just physically, the skills he has are just super impressive. And even though he hasn't got a championship or a playoff appearance, it's just he can do things that a lot of quarterbacks just can't do.
I do think Russell. Go ahead, Eric.
The thing with Wilson is, I think the big question mark for me, if Wilson can, because in Rodgers' first year with Hackett, it was still freewheeling, it was still not efficient. That team was defense, turnovers, close games, running game. And then in year 2, you saw that decline in his yards per attempt. And 1, 2, 3, boom. 1, 2, 3, boom. He found that. If Wilson can, in year 1 under Nathaniel Hackett, again, the offensive coordinator when Rodgers, eventually became MVP twice over. If it doesn't take Wilson the 2 years that it took Rodgers to click, I think our opinion of him changes a lot, because Wilson has exactly the same issues that Rodgers has, which was too much freelancing, not enough trusting the wide receivers on the team. And that's where I want to see it. I put Wilson in that top tier group. If this year I see the 1, 2, 3, bam, 1, 2, 3, the quick passing game. And to Jeff's point, there might just be an argument that he's not big enough to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a 5'10" quarterback and you hit your back foot and like you can't see anything, then that, Rodgers never had that physical limitation. And so, there were issues there, so that's kind of where I am on Wilson. I need to see once and for all that the Seattle Seahawks being kind of stupid was the reason he wasn't as effective as he could have been.
I think if Russell Wilson kept playing in Seattle, he was going to punch his ticket for the Hall of Fame. But because the narrative would have been that Pete Carroll
limited the
ball, but when they, when he had the team, he won. But Pete Carroll kept him from getting there. Now he goes to an offensive-minded coach, and it's perceived to be an offensive, good talent around him offensively. And so if he would, come in and throw 27 touchdowns and 16 interceptions and finish third in the division, and he'll go to one playoff as a wild card. Like he needs a Kurt Warner with the Cardinals type of finish in Denver to cement his Hall of Fame right? Like, do you agree? Or
I think he's Hall of Fame already.
Okay.
I think he's Hall of Fame already. And people love him. I think he's Hall of Fame already. It's like Eli Manning is going into the Hall of Fame, and he's not as good as Russell Wilson has been.
I want to hit a couple questions real quick. One, how about this? Could Herbert just be Jay Cutler?
I don't see that. I mean,
Jay Cutler won a play. Was that Jake
No,
Plummer?
Cutler melted down at the end of his rookie year against the San Francisco 49ers at home in 2006. Then in 2007, they weren't very good, and they were like 7-9 or something. And then in 2008, the 4-8 San Diego Chargers caught, I believe, what was the 8-4 Denver Broncos, and they met and they blew that division lead, right? Like the Chargers have been doing this nonsense. I already swore once. I can only swear once per podcast. The Chargers have been doing this crap for years, right? But they did it to the Broncos in 2008, where Cutler let a 4-8 San Diego team catch him from behind. And then with the Bears, he made the playoffs once, and the only time they beat a team was the 7-9 Seahawks at home. And then they hosted the NFC title game with the Packers, and Cutler he got hurt, and they let Caleb Haley come in and play, and Caleb Haley looked better than him in that game.
Yeah. One other one I'll put up there, and then we'll get out of here because Jeff is definitely not gearing down for bedtime. Looks like he's gearing up to head out in Los Angeles. Hey guys, this has been one of the better casts so far. I love this kind of conversation. I do too. I love these things as well. Wow. So I'm glad Aaron and a lot of other folks enjoyed it. All right, it's been a lot of fun for us. Those are our quarterback tiers. I look forward to next year when we look back and go, well, here's what the hell we got wrong. That should be interesting. We appreciate everybody listening to us on Too Deep again. If you can hit that like button, the love button, the subscribe button on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook. It helps us out immensely. Doesn't cost you nothing. We do appreciate it. Let everyone know about the podcast if you enjoyed it. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, my name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB, saying thank you very much for joining us here on Too Deep.